leaders of a quote-unquote populist movement in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very, very dangerous because these are, just as I call them in my book, the Judas goats. These people are Judas goats.
Mm-hmm.
They are designed to control the thinking and direct the thinking of these good people out there, like my friend, the big shot lawyer, and like so many people we all know, designed to corral them and control them and keep them loyal to the interests of this thing we call the Jewish lobby.
Yeah.
And what it represents, the powerful forces that it represents that are looting this country and bankrupting this country morally, politically, financially, and in every other way.
No, I agree, Mike. And you know what you said before about this whole Fox News culture, and I emphasize the first four letters of that word culture. It is a cult. I didn't even realize it until now. I mean, I knew these people were crazy. But now when I think back on the people I know who are addicted to this, and they are addicted, they are a cult. They use all the same phrase words. They have to get their fix, their Fox fix every day. And you come along and inject you try just to pull that needle out of their arm just a little bit with some reason and to explain this and explain, and they, like I said, it's like getting between a junkie and his needle. They go out of their minds. I think that you have hit on something here that I hadn't realized, but yeah, it is a cult without a doubt. Keith Johnson.
Yeah, there are two main forces today that are working both sides of the field. On the right, you have Glenn Beck, okay, and he works on an emotional level. And then you've got on the left, you have Jon Stewart, and Jon Stewart's working the liberals, and how he attacks is through ridicule. You've heard of Saul Alinsky, rules for radicals.
Oh, yeah.
Rule number 5 is ridicule is man's most potent enemy. So what's funny is in the article I wrote previously to this one, the Arabs run Hollywood, shut up, you're disturbing the elite. I point out that shortly after Glenn Beck's Restoring Honor rally, he got on the air and he told his flock, his people, that they should stop holding demonstrations. They shouldn't bring signs. They shouldn't wear these lavish clothes with political messages on them, because the left is taking that as an opportunity to belittle them. So what he's doing is he's trying to stifle free speech. I will say this about the Tea Parties in the town halls, is they were getting people's attention. But now the people on high have been sending down word, listen, we don't want these protests to continue. So Glenn Beck's out there telling his people, stop holding rallies, don't bring signs. Instead, he says, bring your children. That's the best kind of message. So you see what's going to happen here is Glenn Beck's crowd is going to bring their children, and when they see people like, out there that are kind of in the middle between the left and the right, and they're saying, end the Fed, and they're out there with their bullhorns and stuff, then you're going to have Glenn Beck's people walk over with their children and say, would you keep it down? We have children present,
Oh, yeah.
And at the same time, over here on the left, you've got Jon Stewart, who is going to be holding a rally later this month calling Restoring Sanity, which is basically a parody of Glenn Beck's Restoring Honor rally, right? And this is what he says on his website, if I can get to it. He goes, this is a rally for the people who've been too busy to go to rallies, who actually have lives and families and jobs. Think of our event as Woodstock, but with the nudity and drugs replaced by respectful disagreement. And he says, we're looking for people who think shouting is annoying, counterproductive, and terrible for your throat. Bring your indoor voice. I mean, what happened to the left that we knew in the 60s and the 70s that were, anti-fascism, anti-war? What have they turned into? Now they're saying to bring your indoor voice? But you see what's happening here. It's a coordinated effort between the left and the right to bring free speech to an end. So the left will make fun of you, and then the right will say, well, we're just not going to do that. That's like a social faux pas, and anybody who does that, we got to get in their face.
Interesting.
So, this is interesting because this ties in directly, right, into a very interesting item in the New York Times today. Now, I had written some months ago in American Free Press, and I've talked about it on my own radio show, about what I perceive as this manipulation of the Tea Parties and certain other things that have been happening. And what I basically said was that I think the establishment is getting ready to set us up for a very serious three-way presidential race with a quote-unquote left-wing Democrat and a quote-unquote right-wing Republican. Well, Thomas L. Friedman, who is one of the most distinguished columnists for the New York Times, has a piece in the New York Times today, say, Third Party Rising. And he says there's a revolution brewing in the country, and it is not just on the right wing, but in the radical center. I know of at least two serious groups, one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast, developing third parties to challenge our stagnating two-party duopoly. Mm-hmm. And then he goes on. Now, this is very, very interesting. He goes on to say that, talking about Barack Obama, Obama probably did the best he could do, and that's the point. The best our current two parties can produce today is suboptimal, even when one party had a huge majority. We need to stop waiting for Superman and start building a super consensus to do the super hard stuff we must do now. Anyway, he goes on to say, yes, we need a third party in this country. This is the New York Times. This has been, stuff like this has been appearing in the New York Times and the Washington Post. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go out on a limb here because I think I'm right. Now that the Jews, I've been predicting this from the beginning, and a lot of people were laughing at me and saying, oh, well, Barack Obama's controlled by the Jews. He does their bidding. Well, I've been saying from the beginning that the Jews were never happy with Obama, but they had to, well, what's going to happen is Obama is going to get a serious challenge for renomination that is going to split the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. Obama will be renominated, seriously weakened.
Yeah.
Someone, most likely Sarah Palin, will emerge as the Republican presidential candidate. And those two will be tainted. The media will play this up, that Sarah Palin's too extreme and Barack Obama is a failure and a flop, and the Democratic Party is too damaged. We need a good, solid, centrist presidential candidate, and I guarantee you they will make one emerge. I personally think it's going to be retiring Senator Bai from Indiana. But whoever it will be, this person will be the one being propelled by the mass media, by the Jewish power interests in this country. So I've been holding off on making that formal prediction for a long, long time. But as I say, I'm going out on a limb, but I think I'm right.
I suspect that you are, because at the risk of sounding like I'm pandering, you usually are, Mike. Keith, what do you think about that?
Well, you know who's funding the Tea Parties is the Koch brothers. You know who the Koch brothers are?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones that are there funding the Tea Parties. Most of them, like, well, I can't even remember some of the names of these stupid Tea Party.
And then, of course, Murdoch has been propelling them along through Fox News.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they're deliberately building up tensions, because if they didn't want there to be dissent out there, they wouldn't have propelled the Tea Parties. And while there are good people, good, decent, grassroots Americans who are involved in the Tea Parties, and the argument can be made, well, it's a good thing, let's support them. The fact is, it's not a good thing, because these things have been artificially created by our misrulers to exploit us further. And that's why I have never wavered in my criticism of the Tea Parties. It's not very fashionable to do it, because, people say, oh, well, we need to work with the Tea Parties and get our ideas in the Tea Parties. Well, that isn't how it works. I mean, it would be nice if it worked that way, but no, we have a real serious situation in this country, and Mark has just written this piece, which I guess he's already published, about the departure of 3 key Jewish figures from the Obama administration. I definitely think this is the time when the Jewish power interests are getting ready to throw Barack Obama overboard.
Well, if you don't mind, guys, let's talk about that for just a minute. And Keith, I do want to get to your article as well, because it was so,
good.
It was just so good.
It's a silly thing I threw together.
No, I'm telling you right now, it was so good, because these are things. It's funny you brought up the Star Trek thing, because I thought that I was the only one who saw, and I saw this like 20 years ago. I said they're trying to make these Klingons out to be like Arabs, because if you listen to the way that the Klingons speak, it's got that guttural type of thing that you hear in the Arab languages, and I can remember as a kid being really uncomfortable with the way that they portrayed these Klingons, and I didn't even understand why, but I do now. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, Mike, at the risk of shameless self-promotion, my thesis here that these 3 Jewish characters who are jumping ship in such short time relative to each other. Let's face it, these announcements coming as quickly as they did on top of each other, that indicates to me that they want to send a message that they are getting out of Dodge. What do you think about this? Now, I go so far as to postulate that they have decided to get rid of Obama either politically or physically, and that they don't want any operatives there, just as they didn't want any Israeli operatives in the Twin Towers on 9/11, and they got warning ahead of time to get the hell out of there. They don't want any operatives there when whatever this ticking time bomb, when it goes off, they don't want any of them there at the scene of the crime. What do you two fellas think about this as a thesis?
Mark, I'll tell you what, why this is kind of a nuanced approach on this, but the average American, when they hear that Rahm Emanuel and David Axelrod and Lawrence Summers are leaving the administration, the average American, they say, that's just there's a change and the president's reordering his staff and everything like that. But and this will be, I will be accused of anti-Semitism for this, but the fact is,
you're right. No, you're right. I know what you're going to say. For them to walk away from this is like walking away from a bag of money 6 feet high and 6 feet wide.
The average Jew in America who hears that these 3 Jews are leaving the administration, their eyebrows will go up and they're going to say, "Oh, okay, we don't like Obama anymore."
Exactly.
I guarantee you that if you scan the Jewish press, and when I refer to the Jewish press here, I mean
the
local community Jewish newspapers like the Washington Jewish Week or the Forward in New York, or whatever it happens to be, there will be commentary, if there hasn't been already, about the fact that the key Jews surrounding Obama have left the administration. Now, of course, if I say that, or you say that, or anybody else says that who is not Jewish, it's like, why is it relevant that they're Jewish? Why do you bring that up? And yet this is the kind of thing that is discussed freely and openly in the Jewish newspapers, and the symbolism is not missed by the readers of the Jewish newspapers.
Exactly.
But the average American, most of the average Americans that I know wouldn't even have any inkling that Rahm Emanuel, Larry Summers, and David Axelrod are even Jewish.
Absolutely. And the thing is, for them to walk away from something like this, let's face it, short of the office of president itself, this is what Jews are raised to aspire to. Okay, you're either the head of a Fortune 500 company, or you are the head of some giant media conglomerate, or you are working directly for the president. And think about this in a logistical sense, you two guys. Let's face it, the last time that Israel had somebody, in effect, the eyes and ears of Israel, so close to a president, you had Matilda Krim in the LBJ administration, and then you had Monica Lewinsky to a certain degree with Clinton. For them to be willing to forfeit the kind of raw human intelligence that they are able to gather at the end of each day by losing 3 guys like this, Rahm Emanuel, David Axelrod, and Larry Summers, this is a huge loss to them. So you have to ask the question, why is it worth it to them that they lose these three very important eavesdropping mechanisms on Barack Obama? Keith, what is your theory about that?
Well, I've always believed that the last hands-on president was George